When directors bury their heads, it's not because they're irresponsible, it's because they're exhausted and overwhelmed, and then things spiral fast. Your suppliers start to pull credit, HMRC tightens its grip, and staff start to worry. A business that took years to build can be lost in weeks. And most businesses, they don't fail because the directors are bad people. They fail because the pressure becomes unbearable. And that is exactly what happened in this case. It was a long-standing retail and trade business built over more than a decade. It suddenly found itself crushed by rising costs, reduced demand, and a devastating drop in cash flow. So what happened was the director reached out to me originally, and he admitted that he couldn't hold it together any longer, and finally he'd asked for help. He had been worrying about this for months and months, not sleeping at night, not eating properly, and because he made that call, we were able to guide him through a legal pre-pack administration. And what this did, it saved the business, it protected every single job, and it gave him the best opportunity to start a fresh company, and it writ off a lot of unsecured debt. Now, if you're watching this and your business feels like it's slipping, the story's going to show you how a pre-pack works and why it might be the lifeline that you didn't know existed. Chris Worden, welcome to the show. So let me tell you a little bit about this business and what it looked like when he came to us. So the business had been established for many, many years. It was originally, his father started it, he brought on the son. It started off as a regionalised business and it had a shop, and then it actually started to sell to the whole country, and it actually sold into Europe. It was supplying retail customers and trade, and it was a very, very specialist service that they provide within a specific industry, okay? Now, problem started is the market become tougher. Originally, they pretty much had free reign, then competition comes into the market, and the margins become really, really thin. And there was also some serious issues that were developing under the surface, and mainly cash flow had dried up. The suppliers started to tighten the terms, so they wanted their money quickly, and the business had become reliant on one major revenue stream. Now, in addition to that, the stock that they had was falling. They were selling it for cheaper than they had been selling it for previously, and it was becoming harder to service the customers that they built up over the years. Now, while all this was going on, they missed some HMRC payments, and it started off with, listen, we just can't make this VAT quarter, but things are going to get better, we'll sort it out next quarter. And obviously things didn't get better. And before they knew it, they were behind on 4 VAT quarters, and they started to miss PAYE payments. Now, they didn't mean to do this. What happened was they had every intention to get out of the hole. And you know yourself, sometimes you'll miss one VAT quarter, and the HMRC, they're not on your door at that stage, are they? They might be sending you letters. Sometimes they don't even call. Dare I say, it's an easy thing to do, but the problems arises if you miss the next one, and then the next one. Now, in and amongst this, like, the business had demand, like it had customers. It had had a problem with one specific customer, but the director, he was broken. Like, he was literally at breaking point. The emotional toil that this had caused him, because his dad had stepped out of the business now, and it was all down on him. Now, when we got into it, the reasons why the business failed, well, obviously COVID, post-pandemic, for months and months, he was unable to trade. And after the pandemic, there'd been a huge shift in the behaviour of his customers. They weren't spending like they used to. Now, as you probably know, his whole supply chain costs had gone up. Import costs had gone up. Freight costs had gone up. Supplier prices had surged. And obviously he had this one reliance on this particular trading partner. And when that access to that partner reduced, and it reduced for months, revenue dropped by over 50%. So what they tried to, obviously like any business, it's like, well, is there any funding available? So they took on some personally guaranteed debt, but the banks wouldn't lend any more money. And the shareholders, so him and his dad, had put all the money in that they could. They literally could not inject any more capital. So obviously, in addition to that, remember I said lower stock levels, fewer sales, worsening cash flow. The retail market really tightened as well. As I said, more competition have come into the market, the margins were collapsing, and the top and bottom of it, the business couldn't recover. And it wasn't mismanagement. Like, these guys had run this business solidly for many, many years. They paid the tax on time. They put their own money into the business. The company owed them money. They were also a creditor. They took personally guaranteed loans to try and get through. It wasn't mismanagement. It was circumstance. It was pressure. It was market timing. Now, when they come to us, we went, right, let's look at this. Is there any way that we can rescue it? Because obviously, a good insolvency guy will try and help you avoid insolvency. Yeah, you've heard that right, okay? If you speak to somebody and the first thing that they say is like, let's get out, let's sign notices, that should be a little bit of a red flag. So we had to look at, right, and we'll do this with everyone we speak to. And by the way, if anything I've said to you so far has hit a nerve and you want to speak to one of my team, go to the description. There's a link at the top. Click on it. One of my team will call you today. Free, independent, no strings, no obligation, and we're going to run you through this process. We're going to look at what the options are. And the first option for this guy is like, is there any way that you can sort of keep trading and hope things improve? You know, can we speak to HMRC and can we informally try and arrange a time to pay? And that's where you say to HMRC, you go, right, I appreciate that I'm behind, but I want to pay my debts over an extended period of time. Now, generally, they'll offer anyone 12 months, but in certain circumstances, you can get 2 years, you can get 3 years. In real anomalies, you might be able to get a little bit longer. Now, when you go to HMRC about time to pay arrangements, you've got to be clear on what you want, and you've got to be telling them why you want it. What you don't want to be doing is accepting the first offer that they give you, because they're probably going to want it in a lot quicker timescale than you can actually afford to do it. And I see it all the time where directors go, yeah, okay, they just want HMRC off the back. They might have an enforcement agent inside the premises and go, yeah, whatever, I'll pay it over 6 months, knowing full well they're not going to be able to keep up with it. And the problem is if you set up a time to pay arrangement and then you fail to pay your other HMRC commitments on time, so that could be missing a VAT return, missing PAYE, missing corporation tax, or indeed failing on the time to pay arrangement, so basically not paying them what you say you're going to pay them, it'll be in breach and HMRC will be back on your door. Now the problem is cash flow had run out. Like literally the business was in an overdraft, and because the loss of the trading partner, the outlook was really bleak. And what we tried to do is we go, right, well, could we get a 3-year time to pay arrangement with HMRC? Now HMRC said no. And it was crazy because they could have got out of it in 3 years had HMRC accepted it. But they said no. And the company couldn't do anything else. So it reduced their options. Now option 2 we looked at was a CVA, company voluntary arrangement. And that's a little bit like a time to pay arrangement, but it's formal. People are aware of it. It's on company's house that you're in a CVA. And although you don't appoint an insolvency practitioner is there to supervise the CVA. Now, HMRC are one of the largest creditors, And when we looked at this, what it was, they'd be able to pay their debts over a period of 5 years. So it would have brought down servicing debt to around £10,000 per month. But HMRC would have rejected it. A lot of the time, HMRC just see a CVA as another time to pay arrangement, and we didn't believe some other key creditors were likely to support it. And also when you looked at it, it's like, okay, to commit to this, it's a noose around this business's neck for a long time. Now, CVAs are great if you are in care and you have a CQC, or if you are a haulier and you have an O licence. But in this scenario, the insolvency practitioner, because at this stage we brought one of the IPs on, remember I'm not an insolvency practitioner, my unique selling point in this whole industry is I'm there to advise you, the director. People don't quite understand that the IP is there to advise the company and actually represent creditors' interests. You need somebody like me to walk you through these options. So because we couldn't do any informal time to pay arrangements and juggle things about, because we believed the CVA was unlikely to get accepted, obviously cash flow was too weak to sustain repayments, we had to look at some pretty drastic insolvency processes. Now, the first one we looked at was standard liquidation, and it would have closed the business forever. It would have made all the staff redundant. Obviously, the customers that they built up over years would be unsupported, and it would have destroyed over 10 years of hard work. And because they believed that in and amongst this there was a business worth saving, it was decided that a liquidation wasn't the right option either. And we looked at a pre-pack administration. Now, what a pre-pack allows you to do, it's a legal transfer of the business and its assets to a new company, set up with the same directors, okay? So you've got insolvent company here, they set up a new co with a slightly different name, and they agreed to buy the assets and the business of the new co. Now, on the name side of things, they agreed to buy the name out of administration. And what it allowed them to do is they continued to trade the very next day. All the employees of the old company was transferred under 2P rules, so everyone saved the jobs, and customers continued to receive the service that they'd had for years and years. And here's the most important thing, is the administration was a better outcome to the creditors of the insolvent company than a liquidation fire sale. And that's really important. You've got to be able to demonstrate that doing an administration will get more money back to the creditors. And it was really the only option that was going to preserve the business. Now, what we did is we got in there early. When he picked the phone up, the guy was embarrassed, he was overwhelmed, and he was convinced he'd failed. He was convinced it was over. And what we did is we helped him understand. Listen, the guy wasn't alone. We get hundreds of inquiries every month, and a lot of those directors, they freeze under pressure. And obviously, insolvency isn't the end. It was a strategy that helped him protect value and start again. Pre-packs are there to save viable businesses. And what we did is we guided him through it step by step. And we took the emotional weight off his shoulders so he could think clearly. If you're under pressure as a director, you're fighting fires every day, you don't know how you're going to pay payroll, and you've got no idea what's going to happen next. Your head is on so many different things. It's not focusing on the one thing that makes a difference, which is running the business. And what our supporters, we just said, listen, let's go through this in plain English, okay? We helped him prepare for it mentally. We helped and assisted with getting valuations done, negotiated the sales, and we helped him communicate the staff and settle them down. And helping him understand, really, that this was a fresh start. You know, it wasn't a failure. So once we sort of get into it, let's talk about what a pre-pack is and what the steps are. Well, the first thing is we had to assess everything that was going on in the business. What were the debts? What were the assets? What was the cash flow looking like? is there a business in here that's worth saving? And then we've got an agent to value that business. And it's a RICS registered valuer, and they assessed everything. Plant and machinery in the business, vehicles in the business, office equipment in the business, stock in the business, goodwill in the business. They also had a look for any intellectual property. And the reason why you get an independent agent is they ensure that any sale is fair and transparent. And once the agent has completed the completed the report, the valuation, the business gets marketed, and it's marketed to anybody, okay? It's advertised to the agent's buyer database, through professional channels, and sometimes to direct outreach. Now, this is the worry that everybody has, is if I go into an administration, I will lose my business. Somebody will come in and buy the business from under my nose. Now, I'm here to say to you, yeah, that can happen, okay? The business goes to the best offer, not necessarily the highest bidder, but the best offer. But I've done this for a long time. And when you're an owner-operated business and the business needs you to operate, it's very unlikely that someone else will come in with a solid offer on a few days due diligence. And in this scenario, there was only one serious offer, and it was from a new company connected to the directors of the old company. And that is what's common in these situations. Now, once that had happened and the offer had been made, there was an evaluator that needs to come in. And an evaluator essentially looks at the offer, they look at the agent's report, and it's down to them to agree that it does meet the needs of an administration and it is a fair offer. And once the evaluator signs off, the company goes into admin, and the first job of the administrator is to sell the company. So they hand it over to solicitors to sell the company and the assets to the connected company. And the new company acquired the goodwill, the stock, the machinery, the vehicles, the office equipment, and it was able to keep trading the day after. All the staff got transferred safely, so every single employee moved across under 2P. There was no jobs lost, there was no disruption to anyone's livelihoods, and the business was able to continue trading the next day. So customers didn't really understand what had gone on. They didn't experience interruption. The brand survived, and the reputation, it's remained intact. So what this whole process has achieved, it was job protection. All staff moved over. Business continuity. Customers saw no break in service. And there was a fair return to creditors. And here's the important thing. The money that went back to creditors was better than it would have been in a liquidation scenario. Now, for the director, it's a fresh start. He was able to continue. The business was leaner. He was able to see some efficiencies that he could make, some costs that he could cut. And obviously there was a lot of emotional relief for him. The pressure that had been crushing him for months had lifted. And going forward, there's a viable future. Now, nobody knows that, what the future entails. Can't promise it's going to be sunshine and lollipops. But with a new structure, he's been able to refocus, and he's got no historic debt. This business is in the best possible shape to make a success. And that's why pre-packs exist. They're not about running away. They're about saving viable businesses, saving jobs, and giving directors a way to reset when the pressure comes too much. And if you're watching this and you're drowning in debt, you've got HMRC pressure, supplier problems, talk to someone. Because the longer you wait, the fewer options you have. But if your business is still fundamentally good, this is a way through. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, right, and you want to learn more about pre-packs, I want you to go and watch that video there, and it'll tell you everything that you need to know about pre-pack administration, what the steps are in detail, how they operate, even how you might be able to get terms to buy your business back from the administrator. Thanks for your time.